They say nature has no favorites, that it doesn't count how long you've walked its trails or how many rivers you've run, that it takes without prejudice. And in September of 2021, two seasoned men, lifelong stewards of the wild, set out onto a silent lake deep in Yellowstone's backcountry. Welcome to the Vanishing Trails Podcast, where the wild hides more than beauties. It holds stories, forgotten, buried, and sometimes never explained. Today's episodes begin far from Yellowstone's famous geysers and crowded boardwalks. We're heading deep into the wilderness to a place only reached by foot or by paddle. A place where the water is colder than you think, and even the most experienced can disappear. This is a story of Kim Crumbo and Mark O'Neill. Brothers, yes, but also legends. Men whose lives were etched into the history of the wild lands across the West. In 2021, they embarked on a canoe trip across Shoshone Lake and vanished. Unfortunately, one body was only found. What happened on that lake is still not fully known and remains not only a warning, but a mystery wrapped in these two men's incredible legacy. And to understand how shocking their disappearance was, you'll need to know who they were. Kim Crumbo was the kind of man people wrote about. A Navy SEAL in Vietnam, a Grand Canyon River Ranger for over 2 decades, and a fierce conservationist who fought for wolves, wildest corridors, and the right to keep, the wild places that we love wild. And he wasn't loud when he spoke, but when he spoke, people listened. He had seen combat, Class V rapids, and more environmental policy battles than most politicians, and he survived them all. His half-brother, Mark O'Neill, was quieter still, a career National Park Service ranger who's served in Yellowstone, Glacier, and other rugged assignments. Colleagues described him as meticulous, thoughtful, and steady as stone. The two shared more than blood, as they shared a love for these places where maps fade out and instincts take over. Places like Shoshone Lake, a glacial basin 7,800 feet above sea level, ringed by forest, wind, and water. In September of 2021, they planned a 5-day canoe trip into its remote arms. And when the brothers planned this trip, there was no alarms, no cause for concerns, as this was routine for them. These men knew how to handle the backcountry, as they had been doing it their entire lives. But Yellowstone has a funny way of reminding us that no one is ever really in control. Shoshone Lake is Yellowstone's second largest lake and one of its least visited, as no roads lead to its shores, and to get there, you either have to hike or paddle, and once you're there, you're there. Now, the brothers were expected to be back on Sunday, September 19th, and when they didn't return, the park obviously grew worried. These were not novices who simply lost track of time, and a search began that day and quickly grew into one of the largest operations in Yellowstone history of search and rescue. Drones, helicopters, ground teams, dogs, boats, underwater sonar, over 50 personnel swept the lake and surrounding trails, and on September 20th, searchers found the brothers' canoe overturned near the western shore. And amongst the gear that was floating, searchers found a life jacket and a paddle. And unfortunately, they found Mark O'Neill's body. He was near the shore, lifeless, cold, and wet. His clothes heavy with water, no trauma, no wounds, and no real cause of death. He was just gone. But his older brother, Kim Crumbo, was nowhere to be found. Now, investigators worked quickly as the weather had been calm, and there was no sudden reports. As the weather had been calm, with no reports of sudden storms or winds capable of capsizing a canoe. But the water temperature told another story. Even in late summer, Shoshone Lake hovers in the 40s, cold enough to shock the system, cold enough to paralyze muscles, and unfortunately, cold enough to kill. Hypothermia became the walking theory. Perhaps the canoe flipped unexpectedly, a shift in weight, a caught edge. They may have only been in the water for only minutes before their bodies shut down. But then, why was only one body found and the other wasn't? Yellowstone Superintendent Can Sholey had known Crumbo for years. He admired him, he respected him, he thought of them as friends. And after days of searching, Sholey had a dream. In it, Crumbo appeared, urgent and angry, telling him to keep looking. It shook Sholey. Now Sholey returned to the lake himself quietly. He said the dream didn't feel like a dream, and it felt like a message. The search continued incredibly longer than protocol allowed, longer than many thought was even reasonable. But Shoshone Lake held on to its secret. The loss sent ripples through conservation and park service communities. These weren't tourists caught in the wrong place. These were mentors, leaders. Hell, they were even icons in the backcountry world. Men who knew every rule and every risk associated in going into this terrain. Theories circulated. Was it a medical emergency? Gear failure? A fluke wave? But the prevailing belief was the cold. The sudden, merciless cold. Most believe that Kim Crumbo's body may have sunk into the lake's thermocene, a deep layer where warm water meets frigid depths, which can trap objects, preserve them, hide them for years, sometimes even decades. His family, rightfully so, chose not to dwell on where he went, but to remember how he lived. Some stories in the wilderness end with closures. Some stories in the wilderness end with closure. Others echo across the trees, ripple through the lakes, and vanish beneath the surface. Kim Crumbo and Mark O'Neill left behind more than footprints. They left a legacy, etched into the wild's land they so fiercely protected. Shoshone Lake has no monument to them, no plaque, but to those who know them, to those who return and listen closely, their presence, well, it's still there. And in the hush of the trees, the stillness of water, and a reminder that the wild, however well we know it, is never truly tamed. Today's episode was written and produced by yours truly, with source material from YO Files and guested feature The Boys and the Lake by Mike Cushmiel. You can find the original article at yofile.com. If you found this story compelling, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review, as it helps others find their way to the trail. And be sure to check out our bonus series, Bedtime Stories, for eerie tales rooted in real wilderness locations, perfect for fireside listening. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, don't stray too far from the trail.